Hello everyone and welcome. In this video, we will explore the lock instruction and understand how it is used to prevent jobs from being executed in parallel. Lock instruction is used to specify one or more job nodes for mutual exclusion, either in the same workflow or in different workflows. Mutual exclusion is based on resource locks, which are semaphores that can either be used exclusively or shared within the limit of their capacity. So let's get started. First, log in into Job Cockpit. Here I'm using username root and the password root. First, click on the Configuration tab. Then navigate to the Inventory tab. From the folder tree panel on the left, expand your folder structure. Navigate to your desired folder. Here I'm using training folder. Expand the training folder. Expand the controller section, then select workflows to continue. Click three-dot action menu from the workflow subfolder and select new. The Create Workflow dialog opens. Enter a meaningful workflow name. Here I will use lock instruction. Now click Submit. The empty workflow is now created. Next, let's configure the resource locks. A locks instruction uses resource lock to control how many lock instruction can access a resource at the same time. A resource lock is configured with a name and a limit which define the available capacity for the resource. Before we can use a resource lock in our workflow, first we need to create it. Navigate to the resource lock, click three-dot action menu and select New. The Create Resource Lock dialog opens. Enter the resource lock name. Here I will use lock small. Set the parallel limit to 2 and deploy the resource lock. Now let's create another resource lock. Click Action menu, New again. Enter the name Big Lock. Set the parallel limit to 5 and deploy the resource lock. We now have two resource locks. Lock small with limit of 2 and big lock with limit of 5. Now let's move to the workflow we created earlier, lock instruction. The graphical workflow editor open where we can design our workflow. We will start by adding a job to the workflow. Open the job property windows and configure the require field. Add an agent and define the script for the job. Next, drag and drop a fork instruction into the workflow. Inside the fork instruction, add two lock instructions. This allows the branches to execute in parallel, subject to the capacity defined by their respective resource locks. Now, select the fork instruction and configure the branch names. For the first branch, I will use small lock, and for the second branch, I will use big lock as branch ID. Next, select the first lock instruction. In the name field, select resource lock we created earlier, lock small. Similarly, select the second lock instruction from the drop down that we created, big lock. Now, let's understand how resource lock control parallel execution. A resource lock has a defined capacity or limit. Each lock instruction that uses the resource lock consumes capacity while it is active. When the available capacity is already fully consumed, additional lock instruction that request the same resource lock cannot proceed immediately. They remain in a waiting state until the capacity becomes available. Let's first look at the simplest case, a resource lock with a capacity of 1. Suppose we have two orders, order 1 and order 2. Both orders use the same resource lock. Order 1 reaches the lock instruction first and acquire available capacity. Order 1 can now execute the job inside the lock instruction. When order 2 reaches the same lock instruction, available capacity has already been consumed by order 1. Therefore, order 2 has to wait. Once order 1 finishes the job inside the lock instruction and release the resource, order 2 can acquire the resource lock and continue execution. This effectively provides exclusion access because only one lock instruction can hold the resource at a time. Now let's look at a resource lock with higher capacity. For example, our lock small resource lock has a capacity of 2. This means that depending on weight configured for the lock instruction, multiple lock instruction can use the same resource lock at the same time as long as the total consumed capacity does not exceed the configured limit. Each lock instruction has a weight, and that weight contributes to resource lock's capacity. For example, if resource lock has a limit of 2 and each lock instruction consumes a weight of 1, two lock instructions can hold resource simultaneously. A third lock instruction would have to wait until capacity becomes available. This is how resource lock can be used to control the number of parallel execution. Here now I am adding more job inside both lock instruction so that we can clearly see the waiting behavior while the jobs are still running. Configure all the jobs with the required agent and script. Once you have finished configuring the workflow, verify that the workflow is valid. Now click deploy and then click submit. Our workflow is now ready for execution. Switch to the workflow view. Now select lock instruction workflow. From the action menu, expand the workflow option. Now select the option to add an order. Enter the order ID as 1 and then click add order. Keep the default setting and click submit. Now add another order, provide a different order ID and click add order, keeping the default setting, click submit. Now we can observe that workflow is executing. In the running workflow, you can see that some orders may enter waiting state while required resource lock capacity is not available. The order remains waiting until another process releases the capacity is currently using. Once the required capacity becomes available, the waiting order can acquire the resource lock and continue execution. You can also click on the workflow name to open the workflow history, which appears in the lower panel. Open the log to view detailed execution information. Here you can see information related to resource log, including configured limit and detail about the workflow execution. This helps us understand exactly when the lock instruction acquired the resources and when execution took place, and also when the resource became available. So that's it for this video. We have seen how to create resource lock, configure lock instruction, and use them inside fork instruction and control parallel execution using resource lock capacity. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.